Ripple unlocked 1 billion XRP from their escrow vault, then immediately threw 700 million back inside. Now that probably has you asking, hold on, what is this escrow thing Ripple's running? How's the actual mechanism work? What was the thinking behind launching it? What problems is it solving? I'm tackling all of this because, frankly, there's massive confusion around how Ripple's escrow operates. Here's how I'm doing this. I've gathered some fantastic clips from Zach Rector and Versan, who runs Black Swan Capitalist. I'm about to explain everything important regarding Ripple's escrow arrangement. We're getting started now. Brad Garlinghouse announced, boom, 55 billion XRP now in escrow. This was back in December 7th, 2017. So let me roll back the clock and share the background. Ripple XRP Escrow is a time lock smart contract system that originally locked 55 billion XRP in late 2017 and has been releasing up to 1 billion XRP per month since January 18th to give the market a transparent, predictable supply schedule. It was created to remove the fears that Ripple could suddenly dump its large homeland, smoothing the XRP supply, and incentivizing market makers and reducing the risk of sharp price shocks. The origins and timeline. Ripple announced its plan in May 16, 2017, committing to lock 55 billion escrow, basically 55% of the supply, in a cryptographically secured escrow on the XRP ledger. The actual locking transactions were combined on December 16, 2017, and setting up contracts began releasing XRP in January 2018. The original design was called for 55 contracts at 1 billion XRP each expiring monthly over 55 months, although the final implementation used a mix of 1 billion XRP and 500 million XRP escrows that is still capped releases at 1 billion per month. How much XRP and current status? And at inception, 55 billion XRP is owned by Ripple and was placed into escrow, representing the majority of Ripple's roughly 80 billion XRP holdings. As monthly releases have progressed, a large share has either been relocked or remains under escrow as of mid-2025, and about 35.9 billion XRP, nearly 40% of the supply, is still in escrow and cannot be freely sold. Circulating supply on the market is around 59 billion XRP, with a smaller amount held by Ripple outside escrow, roughly about 10 million XRP permanently burned. Mechanics. How the escrow works. Each escrow on the ledger's smart contract is locked of a fixed amount of XRP until a specific date. The XRP ledger's consensus rules enforce the funds and cannot move before that time. On the first day of each month, escrows expiring that month release up to 1 billion XRP to Ripple's operational wallets. Ripple typically uses part of this for institutional sales, market maker incentives, and creates new escrows with any unused XRP and pushes those tokens back on the schedule. This creates a rolling queue. The maximum new supply can enter the market at any month is capped, but if Ripple does not sell or distribute the full amount, those tokens are time-locked again, extending the escrow program even further in the future. The problems that this was designed to solve are supply dump risk and investor uncertainty. Before escrow, Ripple controlled a large pool of liquid XRP, raising concerns that the company could flood the market and crash the price. Lack of supply and predictability for institutions, banks, payment providers, and market makers need to model long-term liquidity. The fixed, transparent release curve gives them a predictable upper bond with a new XRP entering the circulation. Market making and liquidity depth. Ripple uses unlocked XRP to incentivize professional market makers to quote tighter spreads and key currency pairs, which supports cheaper and more efficient cross-border payments on the XRP ledger, and of course, reputation and regulatory optics. Structuring this majority of holdings is rule-based smart contracts helps demonstrate that Ripple is not free to arbitrarily sell off its entire stash, which is relevant in discussions with regulators, partners, and shareholders, such as the SBI Group. Smoke and the whole crew poured serious work into getting this information out there, but check out what I've got for you. Take a listen to this.
Firstly, by releasing XRP from escrow, Ripple is able to ensure the steady and predictable supply of XRP tokens, which is designed to foster more liquidity in the market. And because liquidity refers to the ease which an asset can be bought or sold without significantly impacting its price. So by maintaining liquidity, Ripple is able to facilitate the smooth functioning of the XRP ecosystem. And that makes it more attractive to investors, traders, and potential partnerships. And that's what this is all about. Second thing to look at is releasing XRP from escrow enables Ripple to distribute XRP tokens to various exchanges and institutions, thereby increasing accessibility to the cryptocurrency itself. And that is the broader narrative, because it makes the broader availability of XRP and it encourages more exchanges to list the token, which then in turn expands its reach and utility, which is the goal here. So it's just essential to emphasize the macro perspective of the escrow in understanding why Ripple's actions are the way they are regarding XRP and releasing it, instead of focusing solely on the short-term market movements and price fluctuations like everybody else. And that's what he's talking about, the noise, Again, the larger goal of Ripple is to establish XRP as a versatile and widely accepted digital asset as a real world utility. And that's exactly what the escrow is doing there, the release of XRP tokens.
So now Zach Rector is going to fill in some more details here. Listen to this.
Ripple has never dumped the billion XRP that they get from the escrow at the start of the month. That has never happened. And so we need to get clear about what actually takes place with the Ripple escrow. I've seen so much confusion about this, and this is one of the biggest pieces of XRP FUD that we've been battling since 2017 when they created the escrow. And if you go all the way back to 2017, you can track these on chain and you can see for yourself that every single month Ripple is returning XRP back to the escrow. They never have taken the 1 billion XRP that they get from the escrow at the start of the month and dumped it on the market. That has never happened, ever. And if you look over the past couple of years, they've actually been returning about 70 to 80% of the escrow back to the escrow. That'd be about 700 to 800 million XRP. So stop the FUD. Go check out the video breaking all of this down on YouTube that we just dropped.
Man, Zach nailed that explanation right there. I had to share that clip because he's crushing it with how he breaks this stuff down. So anyway, escrowed XRP on the XRP ledger is technically owned and controlled by the account created in each escrow entity, but the funds themselves are locked by protocol conditions until the release schedule or cancellation for Ripple's big corporate escrows. The destination is usually Ripple-controlled treasury wallets. Although Ripple has said it can sell or transfer the rights of future XRP to other parties without actually moving the tokens yet. So the way it works is buyers and institutions can step up and say, all right, there's a billion XRP coming out of lockup on this date we all know about. We're claiming that supply. Here's our price. And that's how these transactions get negotiated. Outside of Ripple's escrow, there are thousands of smaller escrow entities created by other accounts, but on-chain data shows the overwhelming bulk of the 35 billion XRP is currently in the escrow tied to Ripple-related wallets rather than third-party institutions. Some reports note that while legal ownership of these tokens is attributed to Ripple, the company cannot bypass smart contract unlock schedule to access the 38 billion XRP that is still locked up in these conditions. When XRP unlocks for Ripple's monthly escrow, it almost always lands in a few known Ripple Treasury operational wallets first, not directly on exchanges. From there, coverage indicates Ripple technically allocates a minority of the unlocked amount to on-demand liquidity, Ripple payment quarters, and partner market makers, OTC deals, institutional products like ETPs or strategic partnerships, and limited exchange sales for liquidity, while relocking 70 to 80% of that XRP. We just watched the December unlock go down, and here's what the numbers show. The latest on-chain data reveals Ripple's systemic monthly treasury management in action is highly efficient operation completed in just over 10 minutes. 1 billion XRP was deployed from the newly unlocked escrow wallets to long-term contracts main operating treasury. Two main wallets, Ripple 26 and Ripple 27, indicated that the flow releasing the billion XRP from the previously unlocked monthly tranche, a total of 700 million XRP in transactions of 400 million and 300 million, was immediately secured in new time lock escrow contracts. These funds are now scheduled to be released late 2025 and late 2028. Whatever Ripple decides to relock just gets shoved to the back of the line, and the whole thing kicks off from square one again. It's this endless loop, and when you pull up the blockchain data, you can actually see it happening in real time. Check out the Ripple Escrow wallet. As tokens unlock, you can trace the entire journey of how they're being shuffled around and set up, bouncing between addresses before getting locked up again. Now, James Rule said each month Ripple unlocks 1 billion, but a significant portion, typically 70 to 80%, is immediately relocked into new escrows. The remaining 2 to 300 million is used for operational needs, institutional sales, and ecosystem report. Any unused XRP is placed back into a new escrow smart contracts, which lines up with what we've been hearing from multiple sources already. But wait, this is where things get spicy. David Schwartz drops something wild here, that Ripple could sell the right to receive the tokens released from escrow, or even sell the accounts the escrow complete into, but the XRP still can't circulate. And guess what? This has sparked tons of chatter in the XRP creator community and across X. People are wondering if Ripple's actually gone ahead and offloaded some of this XRP to heavyweights like BlackRock and other massive institutions. But hold on, here's where my brain starts working overtime. Ripple's locking up 700 million XRP again every month like clockwork. Now think about this for a second. If they genuinely sold that XRP off, wouldn't we see it landing somewhere else? I'm constantly scrolling through content where people are shouting, "Done deal, it's sold, case closed." Yeah, okay, maybe those things could happen, but proving it, totally different ballgame. What we can actually verify with blockchain data paints another picture completely. Anyone can speculate, that's easy. Showing receipts, that's where things get tricky. Now don't get me wrong, I'm confident Ripple's going to move XRP to big institutions, somehow, whether they've started already or not. But yo, the real plot twist is sitting in the Clarity Act. Tucked inside that legislation is a cap. No company gets to hoard more than 20% of any blockchain's token supply. Meanwhile, Ripple's over there controlling about 45 billion XRP. Quick math, that's 45% of everything. So they need to shed 25% of what they're holding, and this is where things could blow wide open. Ripple's basically going to have to rip off the Band-Aid and reveal who's actually sitting behind those escrow wallets, or at the very least, map out their strategy for trimming that monster 45 billion stockpile down to a leaner 20 billion XRP. Not gonna lie, I'm refreshing my feed obsessively, waiting to see their next play here. And just when you think that's enough to digest, boom, another wrench gets thrown in. ETFs, right? ETF providers are looking at a pretty narrow menu of choices for acquiring XRP. And it isn't Ripple Escrow. No, Ripple cannot sell XRP directly to institutional investors at this time because of the 2023 court ruling deemed those institutional sales to be unregistered securities offerings. While the SEC has dropped its appeal and granted Ripple a waiver to raise capital under a specific exemption, institutional investors can still purchase XRP through other channels such as digital asset exchanges or upcoming spot ETFs. Direct institutional sales were prohibited in the 2023. Programmatic sales are not prohibited. The court determined that programmatic or algorithmic sales of XRP on public exchanges were not unregistered securities offerings because the buyer did not know that they were buying directly from Ripple. Ripple cannot seek capital from following the SEC's waiver. Ripple is now permitted to raise capital from accredited investors without registering with the SEC. But this still does not mean that it can resume the direct, unregistered institutional sales of the past. Then institutional investors can still buy XRP. Institutional investors can still acquire XRP by purchasing it on digital asset trading platforms through other means, such as potential future XRP-based exchange-traded funds. So the million-dollar question becomes, Where are all these ETFs actually going to grab the XRP volume they desperately need? This is shaping up to be the burning question everyone's going to obsess over soon. Now, Dark Horse pieced together something genius here. When you understand the partnerships and how the new on-demand liquidity works and the legal framework of the enjoyment, the fact is that this isn't hard to see how XRP can get from escrow to ETF, supply shock. His theory goes like this. Ripple can fuel ETFs by selling XRP via on-demand liquidity to partner exchanges who receive preferred pricing advantages, and those partners can resell discounted blocks to ETFs. So institutions might have just stumbled onto a slick workaround for dodging those judge-mandated restrictions on Ripple. This appears to be the strategic exit route Ripple's cooking up. Let me paint the picture. You start with Ripple Escrow at the foundation. Ripple sells to XRP via on-demand liquidity, programmatic liquidity provisioning, partner exchanges, market makers, liquidity providers accumulate large blocks, partners receive favorable pricing, volume discounts, liquidity rebates, and spread advantages, and then partner executes secondary block trades. ETF buys discounted blocks from partners, not from Ripple. That's the singular method I can confirm works within the current system. If more creative solutions surface, trust me, you'll hear about it fast. But this breakdown should arm you with real understanding of how Ripple's escrow system ticks and what's barreling toward us. Alright, that's a wrap. Super grateful you stuck around till the end. See you in the next video.